Yes, I know the feeling. Yeah, we'll give you I'll send you something like a private chat to let you know if somebody
Okay,
has a hand raised, definitely.
that's great. Thank you,
And
Marty.
Nell's really good about that too, so.
And I will too, Todd. If I see something, I
Okay,
would send Kelly and say, so-and-so's trying to talk or something like that.
thank you. I appreciate that.
It's almost impossible to concentrate on facilitating and read the chat and
Yep.
that. It's just impossible.
Right, it's like, it's sensory overload.
Here comes.
Hey there, Mr. Gerlach.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Hey, Dan, do you want Marnie just to make you the host so you can advance your own slides?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Would that, and so I can share screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm gonna do that right
Good
now.
morning, Dan.
Hey, Carla, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited that you're joining us today.
Okay. Well, there you go. There's one person. So
One person, and I hear 79 additional people. So you packed the house this morning.
oh, really? Okay. What, do you usually get 150 people? They started dropping?
We've been getting about 30, 35 people. So no pressure, just a lot of people anxious to hear
All
from you.
right. Cool. So we're going to run this. We're going to do about 30 minutes presentation and 30 minutes Q&A. Is that right? Is that our plan for victory?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
And Dan, when you're done with the Q&A, I'm going to be monitoring the chat throughout. And if there's a question that I can lift up, I'll lead with that. If not, I've got one I think I can lead with to get things started.
Okay. Yeah, I think people have questions, just, whatever case.
Yeah.
So, hey, Mary Penny Kelly, how are you? I love it with all the books in the background, make it look like you're, all that.
I know, right?
What do
Yeah,
you
it comes
think-
as a set. You can just
What do
order
you
it
think?
online.
What do you think you are, the director of, Hometown Strong or something? I mean, come on.
Right. The governor's rural initiative stuck in a library for a year. But I'm second vaccinated, so hopefully back out on the road end of this month.
Yeah.
Congrats, Mary Penny.
Yeah.
So
I heard you talking about side effects, and I didn't have any, so I'm hoping I'm still good. My immune system's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm a weekend, 9 days in, and my daughter said, after it's my second shot, she said, "Don't worry, Dad. The elderly aren't suffering as many symptoms as young people."
Oh, that's unfair.
I mean, the hell of it is, as she said this, she goes, "By the way, are you going to Starbucks? Could you pick me up something?" I'm like, I don't know. My AARP discount's not in shape here. Come on, man.
That's good.
Well, Todd, thanks for wearing a tie for me. I see how I rate here. Good Lord, man.
This is we are family here, Dan. We don't feel, but you're the guest of honor. So I'm glad you dressed for the occasion.
I put my pearls on for you, Dan.
Well, see, Carla, we'd expect that of you because you're but I understand that you and Marty are running the show here. So I feel a lot better about this.
We are partners in crime for sure.
All right, so we have Todd. Let's find the only white male we can find and have him host it with the other white male who's doing the presentation. We know
This is business dress for Wayne County, Dan. Come on.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Kelly.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kelly.
Hi, good morning. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Kelly, looks like you're going to take off. I mean, good Lord, you ready to launch?
I know, I said like a 1980 secretary.
I need a
Hello.
fancy pen like that.
Thank you for doing this, Dan. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Y'all, I have a lot of fondness for the foundation because my daughter interned there a couple years ago.
Oh, that's wonderful. I didn't know that.
She did.
That's great.
I think most of the people quit since then. I don't know if she tried.
They didn't have the good fortune of having Kelly as their leader.
Oh, thanks, Marty. You're sweet. I don't know.
Well, no,
It's
I
true.
wanted, and seriously, this is right before Maggie left, and I wanted her to get exposure. She had some interest in health policy that since is abated, but she had an interest in, and I thought putting her with Maggie, a strong woman leader, this is exactly the right kind of fit. And then Maggie says, "Oh yeah, I met with her. She's great." And by the way, I'm leaving to go to the Office of Rural Health.
You're like, great, thanks.
So she got to work with, Brandy Bowman and not Brandy Bowman, but with Brandy Dawson, Bynum Dawson, and Calvin Allen, and so she had a great experience.
Wonderful. That's good to know.
All right, what time does this show start?
I think we're ready, Nell. You ready to start
Okay.
letting folks
We only
in?
have 26 people in the waiting room. I see how it is.
Yeah.
Got better offers.
Oh, I wonder. Oh, you know what? Dan, you might need to make me co-host. That's why I can't see the waiting room.
Okay, so what do I do?
If you just go up to my little blue box and the 3 little dots at the top,
Yeah.
and you should just be able to say make co-host.
Okay, there you go. I think.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. I'm going to turn my camera off. We are recording, and I'm going to go ahead and open the waiting room.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Marty.
You don't let anybody in that you can't identify?
Hey, good morning, everyone.
There's a
ready to
registration
get
process
started.
that has my information in there.
If you could mute your audio while we're presenting and getting started, and then when we start back up, we can unmute for the Q&A session. So if you could mute your audio, please, we will get going. All right. Thank you all. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the weekly call of the North Carolina Rural Coalition Fighting COVID-19. Thank you for being with us here today for what I feel confident will be another great discussion in this ongoing series. My name is Todd Brentley. I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs at the NC Rural Center, one of the partner organizations participating in this statewide coalition. Let me tell you a little bit about the coalition before we get started, in case we have some folks who are new to these calls with us today. The coalition is a group of nonprofits and governmental offices and agencies. We're working together to disseminate vital resources and messaging to rural communities concerning COVID-19. The coalition is comprised of the Foundation for Health Leadership and Innovation, Hometown Strong, North Carolina AHEC, the Governor's Office of Public Engagement, the Office of Rural Health at DHHS, and the NC Rural Center. Our focus in this work, and we've been doing this since June and hosting these calls, is on rural people and places and the unique barriers those communities face in their fight against COVID-19. The purpose of the coalition is not only to share information, and we like to emphasize this at the start of every call, but it's also to hear from you, to get feedback from you, the rural leaders and practitioners who are working in your local communities. So it's a really simple impetus. This is a conversation, and we want it to be a conversation. If you're a regular to these calls, you know the drill. If you're new, just let me point out really quickly the chat feature. We're really fortunate to have a robust conversation that's ongoing throughout these calls. And I would encourage you, as you have questions when our presenter is speaking, to please put those in there. We will have staff from partner organizations who are monitoring it, who can answer your questions in real time, and we'll also pull up some questions from the chat to kick us off at the Q&A section of the call. One other thing I would like to point out really quickly is if you are new and you are interested in some of our past conversations, the foundation has graciously hosted a web page for this coalition where we archive all of our past conversations. And I would encourage you to go to those and visit. We've had some really great discussions around some really important topics since January. So I want to dive right in today because I think we have a really special guest. Our topic is the American Rescue Plan. It's the third major stimulus response to the COVID-19 pandemic. signed into law on March 11th. It's a little unique in some ways, well, actually in a lot of ways, one for its scope, $1.9 trillion, but also because unlike some of the other plans, it's the first federal stimulus that is going to be able to help state governments and local municipalities who've been affected by lost revenue throughout the pandemic. And it includes, of course, a whole host of other funding initiatives, both for individuals, small businesses, and of course, ongoing COVID response measures. I'm maybe a bit biased, but I think we have the perfect person here today to talk to us about this and lead us through this. It's Mr. Dan Gerlach. Dan has served the public for 25 years as a budget advisor to Governor Easley. He served as the president of the Golden Leaf Foundation. He has been the leader of a public policy research organization and also as the interim chancellor of East Carolina University. Dan is currently the owner of Dan Gerlach LLC, and he consults with businesses, philanthropic organizations, governmental agency, and nonprofit clients. He earned a BA in economics and English from the University of Notre Dame and has an uncanny knack, I would add, from being able to see a typo from a mile away, and the grammatical mistake as well. And he also has an MPA from Notre Dame in state and local finance, or MPA, I'm sorry, from Syracuse in state and local finance. I'm sure many of you already know Dan, and for those of you who don't, I feel certain that you will leave today having learned something new. I almost always do when I hear Dan speak. So Dan, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Todd, hi.
Did we lose Dan?
I think he actually dropped. Maybe
Oh, no.
it went out. The bad news is we can't fake this. I can't fill in for Dan.
I'll let you guys know as soon as he dials back in.
Everybody hang
Okay.
tight. I'm sure he probably just had a blip in his internet. Maybe grab another cup of coffee. Be right back on.
If COVID has taught us nothing else, it was Zoom. It's patience and grace when it comes
Oh,
to technical issues.
Here he is. He's
We will
back in
accept
the
that.
waiting room. Todd, we'll let him in.
Thank you, Kelly.
Hey, I'm back. Hey,
Hey,
I'm back.
Dan.
I'm sorry. Gosh almighty, I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. Can I go ahead and share my screen, Todd? As soon as
Yeah,
you-
take it away, Dan. Thank you.
the Lord just struck me down. I don't know what happened here. Okay. Can I get, I just need to be able to share my screen if I could.
Okay, Dan, I just passed it over.
Okay, thank you. All right, can everybody see that? Todd, tell me if you can see that. Okay, Kelly's gonna.
Yeah, sure can.
So let's see. Slideshow, where the hell is this? Hang on a second. All right. Lord. Just have to get rid of this box for a second so I can see what I'm doing. All right, can everybody see the screens? Can everybody see? I can't do it in slideshow for whatever reason, but in any case, you can see the American Rescue Plan affecting North Carolina. For those of you who don't know me, thanks very much. Besides being technically incompetent, I hope that I have a little bit better expertise to share with you on this. So these slides, by the way, they can be shared. And I should say at the outset that if you like or don't like this, if you, whatever you think about this, these are my opinions, not the opinions of the Rural Center or FHLI or the Office of Rural Health or anybody.
If you have anything the morning of the 20th, that would work for me.
Okay, so the morning of the 20th will work for somebody. So I thought what I'll start at the beginning is where does this 1.9 trillion go? Because that kind of where a person's treasurer is, there too is his heart. So let's see where their heart is that the bulk of this went through the finance committee. The bulk of this money, as you can see, about 2/3 of the money went through the finance committee. Most of the money in the 1.9 trillion goes to the $1,400 per person economic impact payment. And that was why in the first package, you remember back, this is the third package, as Todd said at the outset, the first package had a larger per person, had that kind of $2,000 per person. And it was about the same size, but disproportionately more of that package, that first package, went to these individual payments, and still a lot of it goes here, but that's why you'll see more money in other things. That package also extended unemployment insurance benefits and included for the first time a federal tax exemption. Usually when we receive unemployment insurance benefits, those are subject to the income tax at both the state and local level. So that is something that is unusual and a first for $10,200. And I guess the thought is, why add insult to injury? You're already unemployed. Why make you pay taxes on it? So that was a new thing that took up some, would result in some revenue that the federal government thought they might get that they no longer get. The child tax credit, the earned income tax credit, the dependent care credit. A lot of you will be concerned about this. Those of you who work with families and children, especially low and moderate income families with children, this is a huge, but it is a 1-year effort that these tax credits, which will do more probably to lift more children out of poverty than probably anything since the Great Society in the Johnson era, is a 1-year kind of effort, I think, by the Democrats to get this started and say, we're going to give a lot of money per child. We're going to make it refundable, which means that even if your income tax liability is not sufficient to offset the full amount of the credit, in other words, say you owe $1,000 in federal income taxes, your child would be entitled to a $3,600 credit. You'd get the $2,600 in difference, back to you in the form of a check. State and local fiscal aid, that's what, as a former state budget guy, I spend a lot of time. We're going to talk more about that in healthcare too. I know healthcare is kind of our unifying force, so we'll talk more in detail on that soon. Obviously, the next highest share of this went to health, education, and labor. A lot of money going to the public schools, higher education, and childcare support. Probably multiple times as much money going towards public schools as had gone in the previous two packages combined. And more money for basically any kind of intervention to help with the well-being of students trying to improve their condition. More on that in a second. And of course, there's a lot of stuff around here about testing, vaccines, mental health, community health, and so forth. I'm not the leading expert on that. You all will know more about that than I. And so we can talk about it all you want, but I would have little to add to that conversation. And then some more money into rental and housing assistance, more on that in a minute, in the Small Business Credit Initiative as well. So then we go to what about state and local aid, right? What is the what is that all about? Is generally what happened about a year ago is many state governments thought, oh no, the end is near. In April of 2020, nobody knew how it was going to look for the state budget, right? I mean, we didn't know we were in lockdown. We didn't know how long we were going to get out of it. We had been in it for about a month, and people were, freaking out. I mean, people didn't know what was going to happen with the economy and so forth. Because one thing I think a lot of us who watch the economy did not anticipate is that the federal government would react so quickly and with such size and with such speed, with size and speed, which they did, and they deserve full marks for. To help address the needs of this. They've learned from the Great Recession, where that package, even though President Obama got a lot of criticism over it, what happens, I think people felt that kind of just kind of juking around and kind of wait and see was not the answer. The answer is speed. So it probably saved us. But at the time, we thought that, and the state forecasters thought that we could lose as much as $4 to $5 billion over the course of the pandemic over a couple of fiscal years. That would be about a 20% decrease in state receipts. It turns out it was not that way at all, that in fact we had more money to deal with than we thought, more money than we thought was going to appear before the pandemic started. So in the case, the economy, or at least those who pay the taxes, have had some resilience on this. And on top of that, so people started talking about a year ago, well, the state governments are just going to need money just to stabilize everything. Don't make it kind of targeted for the second unicorn with the purple horn in the counties that begin with Z, but make it more kind of general so that state and local governments who are closer to the people can use the money to fill their budget holes. It turns out not as many states need that as we thought, including North Carolina, but we're going to get some anyway. And so the state and the local governments, and this is important too, is that local governments, every local government in the state, well, most every local government in the state is going to get some money out of this package directly. The counties and the cities and the villages are not going to have to wait for the grace of the state to figure out what to do. They're going to get money directly. So it's about $9 billion all told, 5.2 to the state, and the state is waiting to deal with that. More on that in the next slide. $2 billion to counties, another $1.7 billion to $1.3 billion or so to cities and towns directly if you're an incorporated area. And just for kicks, some people in the Senate wanted to give more money, wanted to direct some of this money to local governments and for infrastructure needs, especially broadband, as you could see earlier today when I blanked out. Maybe I could do some broadband help, but they decided to do, in the finest tradition of Congress, to do both, right? We'll give general aid and we'll give states some money for infrastructure. So there's almost $300 million there for that. Now there's some limits on it. They couldn't just help themselves. And some of it was, well, one, you can use it to compensate if you do have revenue loss. So that will come to a question that Governor Cooper will have to deal with in a second. But they can pay premium pays to workers doing essential work. You can kind of respond to the negative economic impact of the pandemic, especially for tourism or hospitality sectors, things like that. So anything that's geared towards attacking the negative economic effects of that, anything on the health side. So anything that deals with the health emergency and the economic emergency tied to COVID-19 is fair game, and they're going to be fairly widespread about that. The other thing is that they directly say that you can use this money for water, sewer, and broadband. But what happens is that for those of us who have ever had any experience with disaster recovery, and a number of you have participated in calls about that, about equitable recovery and so forth, you know this, is that the federal government's reaction is, here's a lot of money, just get it out, help these poor souls, get it going, and just get it out there. And then what happens later is then the federal auditors stop by and go, well, what the hell did you do that for with that money? That's not what the money is for. And all of a sudden the rules come in after you make plans about what to do with the money. So the state and local government's not being fools to saying, we're going to wait for that Treasury guidance to come forward. To give you a sense of the concern about this, the National Governors Association, in terms of questions submitted 24 pages of questions to the Treasury Department about this money, which is basically 3 pages of bill copy. 24 pages of questions. The state budget officer submitted, I think, 111 questions, all of which had subparts. So basically, the governments are going to stay in place until they can find out what the rules of the game are. So what will happen? So the governor, as we know, has released a general fund budget, right? The budget with the state money, kind of the usual practice, and that is pending right now. The Senate will be next up, the North Carolina Senate, expected to take action in early May. Well, what happened is that by the time the American Rescue Plan was finalized, the governor was trying to get that deal done with the general fund. And then this money comes in like manna from heaven. And he says, I don't have enough time. I don't know the rules. I'm going to submit another proposal later. So the governor will submit another proposal about what to do with that $5.27 billion. I expect that to be the first week of May, maybe the second week, but I'm betting first week of May. I don't have any inside information on that. I haven't consulted a Ouija board. All I know is that that is probably when it's going to happen because he'll want it out there before the Senate passes the general fund bill. I think it's likely to be heavily on infrastructure because, as we talked about, the state does not have to replace revenue. And the idea here is like, well, if your general fund forecast would have been $2 billion higher than it actually was, pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic, you could use that 5.2 to make up for that 2 billion. But we over collected, we're over, so we don't have that need. The only place where we had that shortcoming is in transportation, funded mainly by other motor vehicle sales were robust. Gas taxes were down. Why? Because we weren't driving. We're supposed to stay at home. Don't do anything. Don't breathe on anybody. I mean, socially distant, we were on lockdown. So that gas tax did not flow. And so I expect that the governor will wait to see if you can use some of this money to make up for that gap in transportation. I imagine that there's going to be an effort to collaborate with state and local governments. In other words, I believe, actually, I know there are discussions going on with county and municipal associations about, hey, let's kind of pool this money together maybe if cities and counties want to consolidate their water and sewer systems, or they want to do something about can't legally do something about broadband, but think about broadband, we can match each other. And that way that money can go further. The auditor would want that, because then that's just one kind of type of expense that she would be looking at as State Auditor Beth Wood gets involved in this. So I think there's an effort for local governments to collaborate. I wish there was more activity, and I've been encouraging more activity on the human services side. I think on the physical infrastructure side, there's a lot of this kind of matching and collaboration. I think that the state will be well served with this money that is kind of general in nature to do something like similar to that in the human services side. But I think most importantly, for any of you who represent local governments on here or work for local governments, be patient about what to do with that money. I know some of you, the town manager can't wait, the city council can't wait, the county commission can't wait. Be patient, because what you want to do is see, one, what the Treasury Department says you can do, and two, is see what the state government does. Because what you don't want to do is step ahead of Treasury guidance, step ahead of the state. The state may pay for something that you were going to pay for, and then you got that money you can use for something else. So you got some time, remain calm, do not panic, okay? Then other major funds. So that's not the only money coming here. So on top of 700 million sent to us by the Consolidated Appropriations Act at the end of December that President Trump signed into law, the American Rescue Plan has another $556 million in for rent and utility assistance. Those of you on the call may know that Governor Cooper, with some of his flexible coronavirus relief fund money from package number 1 or 2, I forget which, but the one that passed, almost a year ago now, used some money for rent and utility assistance, but that is now pending, right? The second round, that 1.3 billion, some of it has been sent to urban counties of a certain size, urban communities. I believe it's over 200,000. Got direct allocations. Many of them are already deploying this money. The state, there's a argument between the legislature and Office of Recovery and Resiliency. The legislature wanted kind of county by county targets. The Office of Recovery and Resilience argued that would make it ungovernable. God, we're having enough problems to get this money out anyway. We've got all this paperwork to do. Please don't, tie our shoelaces together. So they're trying to cut that money free. But when it cuts free, it's going to be $1.3 billion in rent and utility assistance, which we hope will address a lot of the need. The Small Business Credit Initiative, a very successful program 10 years ago. The reason why I put it on here is because the Rural Center did was asked by then Governor Perdue to administer it, to get out money to businesses to help make probably under collateralized businesses more attractive to banks, and put some venture capital out there as well, and a series of other things. The Rural Center's job on that, not to brag on them, and I'm not saying I'm a contractor with them and I get paid by them, but I do. So I would just mention casually that they did an excellent job, and maybe you should give them the money again. Do that with you will. But clearly ranked in the top 5 in terms of deployment, top 5 in rate of return. On K-12 public schools and higher education, the K-12 public schools got $3.6 billion. Now, even for K-12, that's a lot of money. I mean, if you think about it, our total budget for education in the state from state funds is about, $14, $15 billion. So this is a lot of money on top of that. And what the federal government said is they're going to give 10% of this to the state to address some problems about learning loss or summer school or things of that nature, kind of challenges to the education and performance of students due to the pandemic. And then 90% will be divvied up to the local school districts. That 90%, they're going to have to take a big chunk of that, 20% of it, to use for learning loss. So they have some strings tied to it. But this is just to give you an order of magnitude, one of the biggest increases in federal government history in terms of K-12 education. And so I think that the superintendent Truitt and others will have to spend some time doing that because the General Assembly has appropriated the December money already. This comes on top of that. Child care subsidies, let me skip to that for a second, just because that is about 3 times the average of what we would normally get from the Child Care Development Fund. So I'm hoping my friends at Health and Human Services who seem to me, and for those of you at Health and Human Services, I know, having worked in the governor's office and so forth, the multiplicity of things that you do, right? The wide range, it's one of the most broad departments in the United States. in terms of the health and human services with all you cover and all you have to worry about. But the thing is, it's the thing you should know about this is that some of us worry that because Dr. Cohen is all vaccine, all COVID all the time, wear your mask, socially distance, get your vaccine, get the other vaccine, be careful, treat other well, blah, blah, blah. Let's care for one another. And I don't mean to trivialize that, but we're wondering if like the other parts of the department are able to keep up and get the attention they need, because, these problems that those divisions were set up to solve are certainly not getting any easier. So on healthcare, big news on healthcare, perhaps a little underreported, is a Medicaid expansion incentive. Now, for those of you who have been sleeping at the bottom of Lake Lure or whatever, may not know that unlike 37 other states, North Carolina has not chosen as the as Obamacare, as the ACA would allow, is to expand Medicaid to more working adult, to adults of higher income, most of whom are working, in certain other populations, as have other states. But so what the federal government did in this bill said, okay, look, here's what we'll do. We'll give you 90% of the money to cover the new population, 90%, well above our traditional share of the Medicaid program. And then, by the way, we'll give you we'll pay for an extra 5% of the entire Medicaid program you already have set up. And the math on this for 2 years, and the math on this basically is that you make money on this. So if you were to expand Medicaid as a state, one of those 12 states left, including North Carolina, and you were to get this federal money, you would make more money off that 5% than it would cost you to pay for the 10% of the share. So for 2 years you do this. I think some critics could say, well, what happens after the 2 years? We're stuck with the bill, but it's by hundreds of millions of dollars the state makes money on the deal. So they are serious about wanting these states to get signed up. There's opportunities to cover new populations. I believe there's a bill filed by the Senate health chairs on postpartum women. I don't know about the others. More money for nutrition, and of course for the various community health centers and those that serve the public. Getting toward the end of my time. Lost time when I lost power, but other kind of things that I think are of interest, especially for those of us with a special heart for rural North Carolina. I know maybe not all you care about rural North Carolina, but you should. If you don't, is that there's $25 billion in restaurant revitalization aid. And to give you a sense of while the economy did okay, if you're a lumber shop, or if you're an internet retailer or anything, you had a pretty good day at the races in 2021. And the odds are people spent more money, North Carolinians spent more money on those things than they did before the pandemic. But in restaurants, hotels, the hospitality industry, not so. In North Carolina, from March of 2020 to March of 2021, North Carolinians spent about $4.8 billion less in restaurants, hotels, and such than they did the previous year. And so this $25 billion, people say, wow, that's going to help a lot. But that $4.8 billion loss is just a North Carolina figure. So you can see that it's going to be very helpful. The restaurants and hotels have been screaming, so this should help with that. $15 billion for targeted economic injury advance, the economic injury disaster loan called EIDL. This is for businesses that may have applied and got part of this kind of grant. It goes with the loan, but this is going to come out and really help businesses in low income areas who previously applied. And of course, there's some money for broadband, in addition to the kind of the physical building out, which you can use your state and local money for, that kind of general pot. There's also money to help with connections for schools, libraries, etc., because obviously that has been uneven, leading to exacerbating, I think, economic inequalities and certainly education inequalities. Mr. Chairman, it's 9:30. I've landed the plane right at that. I know I went on fast. I talked like a tobacco auctioneer. I was not, but we wanted to get through it. Here's questions, and here's my email, my phone number, in case you ever need a highly competent consultant to help you understand all this. Not to make a blanket pitch, but you asked me, so I am. And I'm happy. I haven't kept track with the chat, Todd, but maybe we could ask some questions if y'all are amenable to that. And
Yeah,
just to Marty and the group, that if you'd like to share these slides, I'm happy to do that. So I want to stop sharing.
that's great, Dan. that's a lot of really good information, and thank you for helping us to distill what is, you know, an historical federal distribution of money. So we've got some hope everyone, please, if you have a question, put in the chat. If you want to use the raise your hand icon, please do that as well. The coalition members will be on the lookout if anyone has a question, and they will nudge me. And we're happy to take questions. I would like to kick off with a question, if I may have the privilege of doing so. Is Dan, one of the things we've seen in the previous two responses is that it's the thing you discussed, that there was this tendency towards expediting these funds and getting them out the door.
Yeah.
And we have seen, as those trickled out, we saw some issues of, were they reaching everyone in an equitable way? Particularly thinking about what we're seeing now with the Paycheck Protection Program. Is this new act have anything in it that addresses sort of those missteps of the previous two?
Well, I think to be fair, that each of the acts in kind of the Treasury, the administration's responses, be it President Trump or President Biden, have learned from the kind of concerns going along, to be fair about it. I think there's a lot more concentration in each subsequent package about reaching the least of these, as I would say, from the business assistance to the health assistance, to those realizing the social and economic disadvantage, those people who've been probably hurt the most, both in terms of health and economy, need the help the most. And so there's kind of set-asides and things like that in these various programs for that. And I think that no matter what, people may have disagreed, the legislators in Washington may have disagreed on this package, but I think the certain things about trying to serve the people who were hurt the most is an important part of that. But I think along the way, the countervailing to that is you can't just make it about welfare. One of the things that I think the Democrats especially want to be careful about is not construe this all as some kind of another welfare program. And we're just going to help, you know, poor people and they get everything anyway and all this nonsense. But that's a common theme in American life, unfortunately, right now. And people said to me, well, why do you think people are poor, Dan? And I'm like, well, they're poor because they don't have enough money. Because by definition, that's how you determine somebody's poor or not. But I mean, part of it is because they don't know how to access all these things. So yes, there's a series of connections in here to do of strategies in here to reach the least of these, to set aside money for, you know, the smallest of businesses, the smallest of communities, and so forth. But this inequality really rears its head in how to say this, in a weirdly positive way in some ways, because what happens is that people who pay a lot of income taxes and people have the means to kind of stay home and work from home, you know, they're shopping online and they were earning money, and the stock market did not, you know, which I think freaked out most, you know, more people than we would like to think about, more than the underlying economy. That didn't suffer. Because that didn't suffer, income taxes didn't suffer, because guess what? People who have higher incomes pay more money in taxes. Maybe not a greater share of their income in taxes, but a greater share. So that kind of cloaked over this. And so when you see a state budget that looks healthy, it's really distracting from the fact that, you know, we're still, although the number of jobs is down 4% from the start of the pandemic, even after all the recovery we've had, it's still 18% down in kind of low wage industries such as restaurants, hotels, and so forth.
So we got a question from Carla that I'm going to put to you, and it's what are your thoughts on whether North Carolina will expand Medicaid given there is more dollars for the state?
Well, I think the challenge, I think if I were an advocate for this is how I would make the argument. Is I would say, one is that now that we've had Medicaid, that Medicaid transformation is underway. Remember, there's a lot of energy on changing our Medicaid program. And I think this perhaps can give some confidence that if there are challenges in the Medicaid program before transformation, that this now kind of fixes it. So if you add more money to it, you're not kind of, I'm not saying this is correct, but I'm saying that the impression could be that you're putting it into a better system. And so that might give more confidence in terms of expansion. Two is, if they don't do expansion with these kind of financial incentives, I don't know when they're going to do it. So that's going to be part of it. Three is that I think that all sides have one of the reasons why we have a lot of the money that the governor had to use is because we haven't had a budget agreement in a few years. And that means like not everybody has gotten their way. I mean, there's some stuff that the legislature wanted, majority wanted that they didn't get done. There's some stuff that Governor Cooper wanted that he didn't get done. So I think with all this money, the taxpayers are going to wonder, why are you hanging on all the money? Give me a tax cut, or give me Medicaid expansion, or give me some more money for education, or quit making my tuition at colleges go up or something. So I think they have more of an incentive to reach a deal, and Medicaid expansion might be part of that. I think it still is a tough sell, Carla, because I think that for so long that is there enough of the calculus that the legislature majority has made to say, I don't know if this is the type of thing we want to do, if they can get past that or not. But that said, as I certainly am not one of those who think it's dead. I think that there's some changes that may lead it to be amenable to people.
We've got one more, Dan. Any additional thoughts on how providing premium pay to start workers, others doing essential work might look like?
Well, sure. Well, I think one of the things is certainly this is targeted to the government entities itself, but also applicable to private entities that are serving these essential services. And so I think that one of the ways to do that is consider, in your home county of Wayne, Todd, I mean, where we had an outbreak at the correctional center of COVID, and, prison guards who are not the best compensated and not the easiest of jobs and not the easiest to recruit for. I mean, you should give them some money. You should give them some money to help them stay on the job. They should be incented to do so. And I think literally for people who are stepping out there, I mean, I'm doing this from the comfort of a room where I can sit and talk to you all, but for people who are out there real exposing, I think that's the way to do it. I haven't figured out a way on how I think the state should set up categories for kind of what are essential workers and how to put a pool of money aside for that. I don't think that's their highest concern right now. I think they're more worried about the state workers themselves, to be blunt about it, because that's kind of would take a lot of work to do. So I think they're talking about some of these other things that I talked about earlier. But Lamp, in reaction to your question, that's I think going to be tricky. I don't know if the state is going to be able to provide or be willing to provide premium pay to kind of non-governmental workers. But certainly people on the front lines, healthcare, perhaps education, as the governor indicated, and certainly public safety would be among the categories to do so.
That's great. Thank you, Dan. It seems like we're in that period where we know a little more, but we still don't know everything about how this money can be used, right?
Well, correct. I mean, until the Treasury Department, I mean, here's the challenge. The Treasury Department reads us 3 pages of bill copy, which are very vague, very unclear. And they're trying to figure out what to do without it, to capture the sense of what Congress wants them to do. So they're going to have to put out guidance. Part of the problems in the previous presidential administration is that the agencies would put out guidance and then they would change it, especially for PPP. It was just a crapshoot trying to figure out what was going to be allowed and what not, because Treasury kept changing it and they wouldn't tell you like where they changed it. So you'd have to kind of, where's Waldo, look to see, oh, wait, here's a new question 43 out of 92, what that's changed. And so what does that mean? And relying on that. What the Treasury Department under Secretary Yellen is trying to do is we're going to make sure that we do it once and we do it right. So that's the real, I know it's frustrating for people, but I think it's not like the state is at the risk of laying off a whole bunch of teachers or not having money to pay the bills. So we have a little more time to do this thoughtfully. And I hope we are able to do some things creatively, especially at the local level, to do so.
We've got 2 really good questions in the chat, and I want to make sure we get to both of these. The first one is from Mary Kenny, and she says, since you're offering free advice in this meeting, Dan, how should we help small towns, 1, plan for this public investment, and 2, manage the compliance and audit work?
Well, thanks, Mary Penny, for that. So I think one is I believe the councils on government, the cogs are out there already trying to marshal this. I know I was on a call with Sarah Thompson. Many of you know from the Southwestern Commission, one of our great leaders out there. Also chair of the board of the Rural Center, by the way. But she got, the gang together on their calls. So I think they're working on it. And I think communicating with the COGS, communicating with the county and city, the League of Municipalities and so forth, that's a great way to help start that, to make sure you're not tripping over yourself with kind of things. And waiting for that Treasury guidance. And as when that pops out, Mary Penny, giving them some kind of clarity on that is going to be helpful. Because what will happen is, like when I ran Golden Leaf, I ran into this problem where they said, okay, here's my problem in my town. I need money for this. And I had to say to them sometimes, or more often than I care to, but that's not what Golden Leaf does. Golden Leaf can help you with some other things, but not that. They're like, but this is my problem, right? And they're like, okay, and it's going to be the same way some of this federal money. But you're going to do that because otherwise the auditor and compliance people are going to come behind them and then have disallowances, and people go, oh my God, I had no idea. What? And so that's real important to get ahead of it. I think coordination with the state auditor's office, I think Auditor Wood has taken a very strong, interest in this act and kind of tracking it. And she's, whether she should be in it or not, she's my favorite state auditor. I want that. I was audited twice by her. I was her favorite foundation president. I don't want her her least favorite foundation president, but always agree with what the auditor says in my advice to you. So in any case, that's going to be part of it, right? But what you should say is enlist the help of others, the associations, as I know you're doing, to help them with that. But that should be pretty stern advice. And you're loving.
Thanks, Dan. Any thoughts on online resources to check periodically? What's your go-to guides?
Do we not have some kind of queue here? I mean, what are you jumping out of order? I don't think just to beat this, it's like a baby seal is, you got to wait for the Treasury guidance. Otherwise, it's all hypothesis, right? You could go to YouTube, like, Treasury chat, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And some yokel out there telling you, oh yeah, this is going to be, I talked to higher ups and they say this is going to be this and that. I see this kind of foolishness going on with the business programs all over the place. And it's really more negative than else. So no, there's no online resources out there yet. If you go to like the National League of Cities and the Association of Counties and everybody else and NCSL, the state legislatures, they're going to be the same way.
Thanks, Ben. And Mary Penny's allowed to interject whenever she wants. So we have one more question, and this is from Deborah Owens. Thank you, Deborah. I am the CEO of Raleigh Village East. My members are on a call strike team for vaccine clinics. Can you talk about the assistance for vaccine distribution? And I would add to that, if we have anybody else on this call who maybe has some more familiarity with that as well, feel free to chime in after Dan.
Okay, I know a little bit about a lot, but there are some things I don't know about, and I'm going to, usually I'm completely happy making up an answer. I've been doing it for 25 years, but here I will not because it's so important. So that's something, I'm sorry, Deborah, I don't really have enough expertise in that to answer that question wisely. And if there's somebody else here who can, I just am sorry. But we have a lot
let's
of
put that
people here who can help us.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Let's put that to the floor. Does anyone know an answer to Deborah's question from the healthcare side of this package? Or let me ask you this, Dan. Let me change that around. If Deborah is looking for this, going back to Mary Penny's question, where would she go to find the answer to this? Where might you direct her?
Well, I'd go right to I believe we have people here from the Department of Health and Human Services can answer that better than I. But that money's going through.
Okay. All right.
Hey, Todd, Nick Galvez here from the Office of Rural Health.
Hey, Nick.
I could try to answer this because I know that they're constantly trying to set up vaccine providers, those that can administer the vaccine, and there's case managers that work with those providers. So some of those case managers are within the Office of Rural Health. So the first thing is to get medical doctors or healthcare facilities signed up. That could be rural health clinics, could be a federally qualified health center or a primary care office. And so I can share the link on how to become a provider, because you have to get the providers there before you set up a clinic. So I'll share that in the chat.
That's great. Thank you, Nick. Allison, were you getting ready to ask a question? Let me ask Dan one more question here, and again, feel free to put any questions you have in the chat, or use the little raised hand icon on your as part of the Zoom function. Dan, I know we're hearing now the rumblings and more public discussions around infrastructure spending bill that comes next. Are we done with economic stimuluses related to a COVID response and the rebuild and the aftermath of COVID?
I would say probably. I give that a high probability, Todd. I think people have done about as much of that as they think they're able to do. I think the president had one shot, so to speak, at being able to do a package of this size. And really, I think beyond that, as you see with the infrastructure bill, there are a number of legislators who are worried that this is not all about what they think of infrastructure, which is building something, some capital, good road or broadband or water and sewer and whatnot, but getting into really the human infrastructure side of this, really helping increase, for example, the salaries of home health aides through increased reimbursements to Medicaid and so forth. So I think there's going to be some time, at least not right away, for this money to flow out, because part of the challenge is just because Congress says the money is there doesn't mean that the money can go out, because the agencies still need the rules and they need to set up the kind of apparatus to do it, to withstand, kind of scrutiny that will come later. As part of all these bills that have passed, the COVID relief bills at the federal level, with that have come millions and millions of dollars for the inspectors general in these agencies to go and look, to make sure the money is spent correctly. So if you're a government employee, naturally given the caution that you're going to be a little bit careful about this. And frankly, the speed of some of it is apparent. But to give you a sense of this, there's a program, just as an example, maybe not relevant to a lot on the call, but to give you an example, is in December, there was money set aside for a shuttered venues grant program for, the theaters and places where you go to watch performance where you they just couldn't open, right? Because too many gathering, the restrictions of gathering rules, proximity to other people and so forth. And so what happened is the federal government authorized this December 27th, 2020, the president signed it into law. April 8th, they finally went live with from the SBA with a application process. They said, okay, did all these trainings, all these webinars. April 8th, we're opening it. April 8th, it opens, it crashes, bam, gone. And they're like, okay, so we're going to have to wait and we're going to have to reopen. We don't know when we'll reopen. We're going to have to figure out what we're wrong. So you've been waiting all that time. So there's a lag in I had a slide on there that I didn't talk a lot about the higher education money. And what I know about is in some of those university campuses, which I have some familiarity, is like the money from the second bill isn't spent yet. So let alone the third bill, which is a lot bigger. So the American Rescue Plan is out there. And so it's just going to take some time. So I don't see immediate work on this. Now on the infrastructure bill, I don't have any special insight in that, except for that's going to take a while. That's not going to be something that I think is going to get done very easily, very quickly. Although many people said that about the American Rescue Plan, and here we are today talking about the enactment of it. So often wrong, never in doubt. That's how I roll. I saw Allison Owen posted something. What did she post?
Well, if there's not another question, I do have one final question for you, Dan. And if anyone has one, please feel free to put it in the chat box. And this is just me wanting to glean some of your past experience and advice. And
Yes,
this is a disaster like none other, but still nonetheless a disaster. What do you think we've learned about how the state and local municipalities will, can we glean anything from this, how we respond to future disasters? Maybe not even pandemics, but even the environmental ones, like a hurricane.
Okay, that's a very, okay, Heidegger, let me deal with that for a second. So I would say that disasters normally are not global, right? I mean, when we're talking about reacting, for those of us who started some programs and reacted as if this were a natural disaster, natural disasters affect community, and not to trivialize it, but it does not affect generally whole states, whole nations, whole continents. And so that reaction is a little bit different. But I think what happens is you have to have, if you're a nonprofit or a state agency or federal agency, is just have some planning of when something happens, like a disaster or a shock or something unencumbered that we have to react to, what are we going to do? We have to have a plan for victory there. And we have to have an apparatus set up like, here's our unexpected or our disaster or our whatever team. And this is the type of thing that we're going to have to do. And by the way, have it, listen, here are the things that we know that were going to happen that we shouldn't have to relearn, right? It shouldn't be our first disaster for the 20th disaster in a row. So there has to be some kind of documentation of that. I mean, when Matthew and Florence came through, people had to go back and find all the Floyd, all the Hurricane Floyd books and so forth. And so I think we need to institutionalize that and generalize it beyond, okay, there's not just a hurricane or earthquake or coronavirus or whatever, but just kind of generalize it and make it willing to do so. So I see that we have Alcinoan that looks suspiciously like, yes, Maggie Sauer. Is this you? What do you like post on like under aliases, Maggie? Is this what we've come to? So just so people lose the point, and I kind of thought it was obvious, so I didn't mention it, but I gathered that people on here would be generally aware of the Medicaid expansion thing. Yes, of course, as if you, the amount of money that would come from the federal government for healthcare would be in the billions. It would cost the state some more money, or depending on how you structure it. It may not cost the state general fund or taxpayers any money, depending on how you structure it. But certainly for the first couple of years, it's true, that said. And then, there have been a lot of work by my friends from the Cone Health Foundation and KB Reynolds Charitable Trust and the Duke Endowment to hire some of the best economists, frankly, in our country to tell you about all the kind of positive economic effects and the jobs that have come from there. And before you joined, Maggie, we had a little colloquy about this where Carla asked me the question, and I thought with transformation and with this bonus money, it may help you. The incentives are probably never better for it to happen. If it's going to happen.
Yep. So folks who are, all the states who haven't gotten on the train yet are going to get an additional 5% to do so. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed, given the number of people who have lost their jobs and their health care, quite frankly. So good to see you, Dan.
Pleasure so much.
Thanks, Maggie. And thank you, Dan. This was great. And I appreciate you giving us some of your time and expertise and insight into this. Just a reminder to everyone on the call, this will be archived on the Foundation's website, and you can revisit it whenever you want, along with all our other recordings. I think Carla needs me to do next steps. And Carla, I think I don't have the date of our next meeting in front of me. I apologize. Do you know when that is, our next call?
Yes, it will be April 28th.
Great, thank you. And everyone, just as normal, they can sign up via the Foundation, the webpage for the coalition at the Foundation website for the next one. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Carla. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks again, Dan, for your time and this good information. And I hope to see you all on the 28th. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Todd.